Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn, and the final episode of this year's Secret Origins Month. To end things out this year, instead of looking at a character's first appearance, let's talk about one of the major aspects of the DC Universe that keeps popping up despite their repeated attempts to either end it or redefine it. The multiverse. Whether it's Crisis on Infinite Earths trying to stop it, The Kingdom trying to redefine its nature, Infinite Crisis bringing it back, 52 limiting it, Convergence doing something with it, I don't think even they really knew what it was, the DC Multiverse just keeps on chugging for years and years and years. It is both a curse and a great storytelling tool. I love alternate universe stuff. Feels like that was significant during Halloween for some reason. Probably just thinking of the Contest of Champions. I hear they're going to announce my next opponent in the next news broadcast. And DC does too. But the origin of the multiverse lies in what was considered a simple, elegant solution to the fact that characters were different now since the Silver Age had started. Bear in mind that when comic books were in their formative decades, the assumption about them was basically the same as kids' TV shows today. It would be on for a number of years, usually no more than 5 or so, and then the demographic who watched it would age out of it and a new show would come along. Same thing with comic books. Most were meant for kids, the audience would age out, and most wouldn't care that Superman had visited 3 different versions of Atlantis over the last 15 years. And still none of them had a ZPM. Sad, really. Point is, enter 1961, and suddenly the creative team of Barry Allen's book was receiving letters from fans asking, "Hey, whatever happened to that Jay Garrick guy who used to be in the book?" And thus, inspired by the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics that postulated that all possible outcomes of events occur in some alternate world or universe, Gardner Fox wrote the story we're looking at today. So let's dig into The Flash, number 123, aka The Flash of Two Worlds.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazons and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
It's hard to say that I'd rather stay awake when I'm asleep, 'cause everything is never as it seems.
My scans come from a trade collecting Silver Age Flash stories, but we'll take a quick look at the cover of the issue. It's one of those classic ones that's often referenced and homaged, featuring Barry Allen and Jay Garrick both running on either side of a brick wall to come rescue a guy who's about to have a steel beam fall on him. Flash, help me! In the time it took you to say that, you probably could have rolled out of the way, dude. I'm coming! I'm coming!
Hey, phrasing!
Featuring The Flash of Two Worlds, a spectacular story that is sure to become a classic. It did, of course, but that's one of those terrible marketing things you really shouldn't do, since if it's forgotten or just really bad, you've basically made yourself into even more of a laughingstock. We begin with our standard preview splash page to get things going, and man, is it just me or does Barry Allen have a really big head? How can you possibly claim to be the Flash, Barry Allen, when I, Jay Garrick, am the Flash, and have been so for more than 20 years? Well, that's what happens when you let the trademark lapse, Jay. You have no one to blame but yourself. How many Flashes are there? 1, 2? This is one of the lesser-known Dr. Seuss books. This question is especially funny to me when in the modern era we have like 6 people named Green Lantern running around, a few Batmen and Supermen, and indeed at least 2 or 3 Flashes. Also, I think this comic may have been exposed to radiation because there are hands mutating out of the caption boxes. Is Barry Allen the real Flash, or is Jay Garrick? Does the Flash live in Central City or in Keystone City? This is a really aggressive round of Trivial Pursuit. Only one thing seems certain. Baby Yoda is really cute. Both live on the planet Earth. That's the kind of solid, useful exposition we would hope for. Thank you, comic. And only by traveling to that other Earth can the Flash discover his alter ego and become the Flash of Two Worlds by murder. We truly open with Barry Allen arriving at the Central City Community Center late, finding his girlfriend Iris annoyed because the magician she had hired to entertain some orphans for charity has failed to show up. To make up for the fact that he was late too, Barry says he can get the Flash to fill in for the magician. I just left him at police headquarters. Turns out he was a serious meth distributor. And so the Flash arrives for the charity show to demonstrate some super speed tricks, like playing tennis with himself. He then proceeds to have a loud argument with himself when it looks like he's hit the ball out of bounds. After an hour of tricks, he decides to perform what is known as the Indian rope trick. It's not actually from India, from what I can tell, but let's not dwell on that. The idea is that the magician makes a rope levitate in the air, the magician or assistant will climb it and then vanish. And indeed, Flash performs that trick and disappears, but after several minutes, never returns. The narration informs us that he was keeping the rope up by vibrating it extremely quickly, and in turn vibrated his own body before vanishing somewhere else. We see him reappear in an empty field, only being able to see the city in the distance. I could have vibrated so swiftly that I passed through some sort of space warp.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
He heads back to the community center, but once inside the city, he can't see any of the local landmarks. The community center is dark and long abandoned, and indeed, he soon sees that this is actually a place called Keystone City. Recognizing the name, he finds a phone booth and looks up the address of Jay Garrick in the phone book. As you may recall, in Barry's first appearance in Showcase number 4, he got inspired to name himself the Flash because he actually had a Golden Age Flash story. Jay was a comic book character in his world too. It'd be like waking up and meeting Robin Hood or Captain Picard. As far as he knows, he's in a fictional setting. He decides to meet him as Barry Allen. A secret spring in his ring is pressed, activating a device which compresses his uniform and sucks it back into a compartment in the ring. You ever think about the fact that that outfit should be really wrinkly all the time? Arriving at Jay's home, he wants to talk with him in private away from his wife. Jay says that he has no secrets from her, so Barry recounts the accident that turned him into the Flash. You accidentally knocked over a retort filled with hard water. And then in 2012, a comic book critic would forget that hard water was a thing that exists and just assume the writer made a mistake. And it makes even less sense that you would get superpowers from it. Since the two are now married, Joan is well aware of his history as the Flash, and Barry reveals his own costume to them. You see, on my Earth, I am also the Flash. You are? Joan, my franchise scheme worked! Later, Barry recounts his theory on what happened to him, that different parallel universes exist in the same space, but separated by different vibrational frequencies, and he accidentally shifted into their universe when he vibrated so fast. Life, customs, even languages evolved on your Earth almost exactly as they did on my Earth. Destiny must have decreed there'd be a Flash on each Earth. Unintentional, but what's funny about that statement is there is literally a guy named Destiny in the DC Universe who has a book that contains everything that has or will happen in it, so that's not entirely inaccurate. Barry recounts his own origin to Jay, mentioning the comic book connection. A writer named Gardner Fox wrote about your adventures, which he claimed came to him in dreams. So is this considered a cameo of the writer of the comic, or just a name drop? Obviously, when Fox was asleep, his mind was tuned in on your vibratory Earth. That explains how he dreamed up the Flash.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
The magazine was discontinued in 1949. Amazing. That's the very year I, the Flash, retired. So the implication here is that Gardner Fox is such a bad writer he couldn't conceive of original stories of the Flash. He had to have them recounted to him in his dreams. Wait, was he still dreaming about Jay even when he wasn't the Flash? Did he dream about him pooping or having sex or anything? Jay mentions that he's actually been thinking of coming out of retirement. He's still got super speed, but not as much endurance as he used to. He specifically mentions that the reason he'd go back to superheroing is because of a string of unusual thefts in broad daylight, particularly when money in a bank started just leaping into the air and vanished, followed by jewels disappearing when a jewelry store was enveloped in darkness, and eerie music being heard after someone had robbed a crashed armored car. The police are completely baffled.
We think we're dealing with a supernatural being, most likely a mummy.
Barry offers to help with his really oddly drawn hand. Like, seriously, I know hands can be hard for artists to draw, but it looks like he's struggling to make the Vulcan hand salute, and there's an unnecessary line for the lower part of it coming from between his ring and pinky fingers. We enter Chapter 2 of Flash of Two Worlds, to immediately solve the mystery without any suspense. 3 of Jay's supervillains are responsible for these crimes: the Thinker, the Fiddler, and the Shade. They've been in prison for the last decade or so and have recently escaped to resume their life of crime. All suspect that the Flash will make himself known again now that they're back. The Thinker proclaims that he's going to steal the Neptune Cup from a millionaire, though the Fiddler points out how wearing his signature device, a thinking cap, that makes his thoughts into reality, is kind of a dead giveaway. You don't see the thinking cap now, do you? Just an ordinary fedora. That's because I'll place a mental command on whoever notices me, to see only such a hat. Some of you may be wondering if I'm employing something similar in regards to my own hat. To which I respond, what hat? Jay changes into his Flash costume. I can't tell you how excited I am to be going off on a case with my boyhood hero. And as they race along, Jay says this: we'd better split up here. Apart, we can completely cover the city in a matter of minutes. Jay had quickly realized his mistake of teaming up with an Uber fan. Utilizing the power of his mind control cap, the Thinker approaches the millionaire's house, where there are some guard dogs. His cap allows him to control them. When and if this man appears, call out to him. Tell him what's happening inside the house. And indeed, after he gets inside the house and takes the cup, Jay arrives in the area, where the guard dogs talk to him.
Flash, wait! The Thinker is inside the house, stealing the Neptune Cup.
The origin of Scooby-Doo is really weird, guys. So dogs could talk this entire time? They just needed the right motivation? Anyway, Jay heads inside and tries to catch the Thinker, but every time he gets his hands on him, he teleports around the room. Jay thinks that his age is slowing him down, but in reality, the Thinker was just projecting a mental mirage at him. Jay's exhausted and lacks the energy to stop him. I've decided to let you live, so you can furnish me with more amusement at a later date. For a guy called the Thinker, he's really kind of an idiot. Meanwhile, Barry happens upon a private yacht under attack by the Shade, who's projecting a massive cloud of shadows around it. Using his speed, he forces the shadows into a tornado away, but the Shade is already getting away with some stolen historical artifacts from the yacht in his own boat. Recognizing the Shade, Barry runs after him, but the Shade mixes in some oil in the shadows he projects out, causing Barry to slip on the water and the Shade to get away. Returning to Jay's house, the two compare notes and realize they'd be a lot more effective working together than apart. But, unknown to the Flash pair, a startling surprise awaits them when he comes to grips with the last of the villainous trio, the Fiddler! That startling surprise? He actually hadn't finished tuning his violin yet, and they easily dispatch him. We enter Chapter 3 and discover that the Fiddler actually has a Fiddler-mobile. I mean, say what you will about a dude whose gimmick is playing a super powerful violin, but he goes all in on it. Gotta respect the go hard or go home attitude. Anyway, the music is causing accidents to occur in the city, shattering glass, causing the construction site accident from the cover, and that sort of thing. Our heroes chase him into a nearby museum while Thinker and the Shade talk and realize there must be 2 Flashes. Believing that the Fiddler might need help, they head to the museum too, but he's already used his magic to put the 2 under a spell, moving them around like puppets. Really thin puppets. Yeesh, look at how stringy Jay Garrick is in this panel. He makes the 2 steal jewels from the museum for them. Once again, instead of just killing them, he elects to freeze them for 24 hours. But all of a sudden, the 2 Flashes are free and quickly make short work of the villains, destroying the violin and the Thinker's cap while also spinning the Shade around. At the police station, the Fiddler wants to know how they overcame his spell. Like all crooks, you made a mistake, Fiddler. We were forced to obey you but you neglected to order us not to try and escape. I mean, I'd assume that with the mind control thing, it'd be kind of an implicit instruction, but what do I know? While taking the jewels, they put the smaller ones in their ears so it'd distort the pitch of the music enough to allow them to break free. Our ears are still bleeding from the sharp edges of the jewels, and I'm pretty sure I've lost all hearing in my left ear, but it was worth it. Later, outside Keystone City, Barry and Jay say their farewells to each other, with Barry saying he hopes to return someday, or Jay can visit him. Maybe I will, Barry. Now that I've come out of retirement, I think I'll go on being the Flash. It's a good thing there wasn't any reason for my retirement, like the Justice Society being under investigation by the House Un-American Activities Committee. Barry vibrates back into his own world, emerging back in the community center hours later. Not sure how he knows how to do that and why he didn't just end up in some other parallel universe, but yeah, he's back in Central City, and so our comic ends with him heading to see Iris at the local newspaper where she works. She wants to know what happened, but he suspects that if he told her, her readers would never believe it. The only ones who'd really believe it would be the readers of Flash comics. They're incredibly gullible. That's why I'm gonna look up Gardner Fox, who wrote the original Flash stories, and tell it to him. He can write the whole thing up in a comic book. Sorry, Flash, but unless I see it in a dream, I can't write any of it. This comic is pretty good, though I have a few nitpicky critiques. However, one of those is not the scope of it. Some might be upset that a meeting like this, the first time we acknowledge the separate worlds of the Gold and Silver Age DC heroes, only features the two fighting a few supervillains who are stealing stuff. But bear in mind, this was not in the days where the universe was ending every 5 minutes. It was nice to see the two working together, contrasting styles, and just being cool with each other. It's also nice that they don't try to make Barry seem better in comparison to Jay. Sure, there is the whole endurance thing, but it's not like Barry solved things on his own. He still failed to capture the shade too. The heroes are considered equals even with Jay's own brief shortcoming that he recovers from. That being said, the resolution seems a bit pat, exploiting a pretty weak loophole in regards to the mind control. By that logic, he never commanded them to run away and then run back and punch them all either. So why not do that instead of shoving jewels in their ears? Still, it's trying to be clever, so I applaud the effort and attempts at creativity, as goofy as they can be. I also like that we get to see that Jay got a happy ending in the intermediate time. Married to Joan, peaceful retirement. Hell, he only seemed to want to go back to superheroing because of mysterious crimes, implying that things are otherwise pretty peaceful in Keystone City. As for the multiverse, the idea of different universes separated by different vibrational frequencies was established here, and indeed, there would be more crossovers between the JSA and JLA, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and everything else to follow. And it all began with one hero meeting his own from the comic books he enjoyed as a kid. That's pretty inspiring if you ask me. Still, the idea of Gardner Fox getting psychic waves or whatever in his dreams so he can see images of a superhero in a parallel universe is just silly. I'd ignore that part myself. Next time, the holidays begin, and all I can say is that we're gonna start things off with something groovy. Only one thing seems certain.
It wasn't a giant deadly mantis.
Hello, my friends. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, and share it with others. And if you get a chance, maybe check out my Patreon.